My name is Kevin McMurray with TrackingSharks.com. I'm a shark attack research contributor with the International Shark Attack File. Today we're going to review the autopsy report for Tomas Butterfield, who was killed by a white shark in California. Mr. Butterfield and his brother were visiting their mother for Christmas. Butterfield was an avid outdoorsman and decided to go bodyboarding in Morro Bay. The Sacramento resident was boarding at a spot known as the Pits when he was killed. Around 10:30 a.m., December 24, 2021, a surfer noticed a bodyboard standing straight up in the water. Concerned someone was drowning, she quickly paddled over to the board and grabbed it. She felt something heavy on the leash and pulled on it. Once she saw Mr. Butterfield, she realized he was deceased, but bravely began pulling him to shore. With the help of a few other beachgoers, she was able to pull Butterfield's remains to the beach. Authorities were alerted, and Senior Deputy Sheriff and Coroner Detective William Miller arrived on scene at 12:30. The following is his official report of the investigation. Mr. Butterfield was aged 42. Cause of death was officially complications of multiple penetrating blunt force traumatic injuries and died within minutes. When I arrived, I began photographing the scene as it presented itself. The decedent was still completely clothed in his wetsuit, with hood, which was already removed, and fins, and still tethered to his bodyboard. I could see that the wetsuit was badly ripped and torn, and the trauma it was covering was significant. When I made a closer inspection of the decedent, I could see a trauma consistent with a shark attack. On measurement, the noted bite radius measured about 16 inches, but this did not seem to be large enough to be consistent with the size and spacing of what appeared to be individual teeth marks/wounds. It appeared that there were about 3 different primary bite zones: right shoulder, right side thoracic cavity, and head. The wound to his thoracic cavity appeared to be in at least 2 distinct arcs, indicating the shark likely reset his purchase on the decedent. The wounds to the decedent's head did not change the appearance of his face. I noted that the decedent's extremities were cold, but portions of his core were shielded by his wetsuit were still noticeably warmer. Mr. Butterfield's wounds were swabbed for DNA to see if they could find a profile for the shark. Mr. Butterfield was taken to the coroner's office where they arrived at 13:45. So here's a smart thing that the detective did is they didn't let him take off his wetsuit and left it on Mr. Butterfield, but they did take and go ahead and swab everything for DNA. Important things here. So the water in the area was very turbulent at the time. He entered wearing a dark wetsuit, dark swim fins, and had his body connected to him by a leash. There were other surfers in the water in the area, but the decedent did not have a specific partner. Sometime around 10:39, another surfer noticed that his bodyboard floating erect in the water, and on further inspection saw the decedent suspended under the surface, still connected to the leash. Surfers pulled the decedent to shore where his injuries became evident. Photos were taken, and Dr. Carter took over the autopsy. So we're going to pick up with that. Dr. Carter provided a cause of death as complications of multiple penetrating blunt force traumatic injuries and died within minutes. And we've got Dr. Carter's final autopsy coming up. During the autopsy, I removed and measured the decedent's wetsuit. We located a piece of what appeared to be a shark's tooth contained between the decedent and his wetsuit in the area of his back. And that's it for his report. Let's go to Dr. Carter's. Let's kind of a repeat of everything that happened. There is a black head covering with extensive bite marks, which are triangular shaped on the right head covering and face. Okay, so we'll pick up here. The head is notable for palpable skull fractures in the vicinity of the right parietal and right temporal bones. There is a V-shaped laceration on the left side of the nose encompassing the left nostril, which measures 2 by 2 centimeters and is full thickness. The nasal cartridge is palpably intact at the bridge of the nose. There is a partial thickness inverted V-shaped laceration over the zygomatic arch on the left cheek. There are 3 distinct penetrating lacerations on the right side of the head, which will be described in the section of injury. No injuries notable on the mouth. The external auditory canals contain sand. So the neck organs are midline with hypermobility noted at the base of the skull in a rotational and anterior-posterior direction. There is no ligature or furrow marking on the anterior surface of the neck. So could be, I'm reading this, maybe that his neck was broken. The chest is asymmetrical. That's important there. Unfortunately, that means that one side of the chest is larger than the other side. There's extensive irregular jagged lacerations on the chest wall, which begin on the right side in the right flank and extends over to encompass the left nipple. Basically, it sounds like half of his chest is sunken in from the bite of the shark. There are visible and palpable extension fractures on the right side of the rib cages as well as the sternum. Extensive full-thickness lacerations with visualization into the right chest cavity and the abdominal cavity. Unfortunately, that means Mr. Butterfield's wounds were so severe he was basically torn open. The upper extremities are symmetrically formed. There's extensive penetrating blunt force injury to the right upper extremity, which will be described in greater detail in the section of injury. No drug marks. There are penetrating injuries to the left hand, which are consistent with penetrating blunt force traumatic injuries. These injuries involve the second and third digits on the dorsal surface and encompass the majority of the left palmar surface with triangular-shaped defects in the center of the palm of the left hand, as well as those at the base of the second, third, and fourth fingers on the palmar surface. So it sounds like possibly what happened there is his left hand was bitten by the shark. Maybe once it hit him, he tried to do some defense, and his left hand was hit. Since the injuries are on the right side and on his head, it's hard to say exactly which injury was first. However, his right hand had no injury. His legs are symmetrical, so that means that his legs are fine. They weren't injured. The posterior surface of the body is remarkable for a large open laceration on the right side of the back, which will be described in this section of detail. So basically, he's just marking that there's a large open lacerations on his back as well. A fragment of shark tooth is observed within the open wound on the right side of the back. Parks and Rec picked that up. Evidence of injury, head injury. A full-thickness, triangular-shaped penetrating injury of the left side of the nose has been described. There is a partial thickness, inverted V-shaped injury to the left cheek, which does not damage underlying zygomatic bone. What that means is that the penetrating injury did not crack the bone there. There are no observed injuries to the maxillary bone or mandible. There are 3 injuries noted to the right side of the head, which begin in the right temporal area and are above the right ear. The first injury occurs at the right temporal area, is 1 3/4 in length, and is full thickness. The surrounding soft tissue has blood around it. Liquid blood and congealed blood are present, so basically a bruise that's bleeding. The wound is associated with palpable fracture of the right temporal bone. Based on this, Mr. Butterfield's head was actually hit with so much force that fractured his skull. And I believe when he refers to the second wound, this is just going in order of the way that the wounds were documented. I don't know that anybody knows exactly which wound occurred first. The second wound occurs just anterior and posterior to the superior portion of the right pinna, so basically back behind his right ear. This wound measures 1 1/2 inch in length and is full thickness with hemorrhagic abraded edges and central liquid and a small amount of congealed blood. This wound is associated with the observed fracture of the right temporal bone. So it had time to bruise. Not sure if how quickly this occurred. He died within minutes. This could be one of the first wounds. The third wound occurs directly posterior to the inferior portion of the right pinna. This wound occurs right at the junction of the base of the skull and the superior portion of the right side of the neck. This wound measures 1.5 inches in length. It's a penetrating wound, abraded and sharp edges, and associated with fractures of the right side of the skull. So again, back over by the right ear. So injuries to the back and right upper extremities. There is an irregular shaped full thickness injury occurring in the middle of the upper back, just over the vertebral column. This is an open laceration full thickness with a pointy tip, which extends from left to downward right. The soft tissue, muscular tissue, is injured with liquid and congealed blood. The injury occurs about 2.5 inches below the top of the right shoulder. So he got bit on the back of the spine. There is a large open laceration that extends from the upper right side of the back into the right flank, which measures 15 inches from the midline of the back into the right flank. There is a gaping injury which exposes crushed posterior right ribs and lateral rib cage. So essentially he's missing the flesh there, and you can see the crushed ribs. This is a full thickness with abraded and sharp edges, which are irregular and jagged throughout. Full thickness means that it goes all the way to the bone. The wound from the right side of the back extends into the right flank and extends onto the anterior surface of the chest and abdomen. So basically it goes all the way around. This is a wound that was described externally, which also encompassed the left breast. This is a jagged, irregular wound with abraded edges and sharp edges, which is the full thickness, again going all the way down to the bone. The wound on the anterior aspect of the chest and abdomen is 18 by 15 inches and broadest measurement. The wound on the anterior aspect of the thorax and abdominal exposes the right chest cavity, base of the right lung, and the liver. Through the defect are seen crushed lateral and anterior right and anterior left ribs. So essentially, the shark crushed his ribs as it bit down onto him. Injuries to the right arm are connected to injuries to the right side of the back. There are multiple overlapping triangular-shaped injuries of the right arm, which begin at the left shoulder and extend to the right forearm. These injuries are full thickness and are to the depth of the humeral bone. These injuries are in conjunction with those injuries described of the right flank, with the right arm anatomically placed to the right side. So he had his right arm down by his side when he was attacked. There are no noted fractures to the right humeral bone. The right shoulder is disconnected with a semicircular full-thickness laceration occurring on the superior aspect of the right shoulder through the right axilla. Injuries to the left hand have been previously described. The lacerations to the dorsal surface and palmar surface of the left hand are not associated with fractures of the bones to the fingers. His right shoulder was dislocated when the shark hit. That was probably a full force hit, possibly could be the first strike. Thoracic abdominal region is explored through a Y-shaped incision. Don't need that. Right ribs are fractured anteriorly, involving ribs number 6 through 9, and laterally right ribs number 3 through 10, and posteriorly right ribs 2 through 10 are crushed, so that's the ones in the back are posteriorly. The right side of the rib cage is crushed. Left ribs are also fractured, which include the anterior ribs number 2 through 9, left ribs just left of the midline. The sternum is not fractured. The midline fat at the level of we don't need that. So it looks like it also hit his right lower lung. Right lung took the blunt of the force. There's penetrating, sharp, and blunt force injury to the right hemodiaphragm. A large portion of the right hepatic lobe is damaged. The penetrating, sharp, blunt force injury in the right hepatic lobe measures 18 by 14 centimeters with transection of the hepatic circulatory system. The hepatic tissue is fragmented and covered with congealed blood. There are no injuries noted to the left main hepatic lobe. His intestines were intact. So there we go over the head again, the wounds we covered earlier. It looks like There was some injury to his brain. Looks like it was swollen. The brain was injured from the blunt force trauma, so the shark had to hit him really, really hard. Cause of death is determined to be complications of multiple penetrating blunt force traumatic injury, and died within minutes. And they sent off drugs. They did come back completely negative, so he didn't have anything in his system at all. That autopsy was performed by Dr. Joy M. Carter, forensic pathologist. And basically this just tells us that his blood was sent off and everything came back clear. So just a guy going out to have fun and unfortunately was taken by a shark. Dr. Chris Lowe, head of California State University Shark Lab, estimated the shark to be around 16 feet long. He has noted that white sharks frequent the lower part of Central California, from Point Conception to Morro Bay, and is very likely a new hunting area. In addition, Dr. Lowe recommends ocean users avoid entering the water near areas where elephant seals breed or congregate, as they are a primary food source for white sharks. A few things we can learn from this unfortunate event are, if you are unfamiliar with an area, check with locals to see if any type of prey congregate or are known to stay in an area. 2. Swim, surf, and bodyboard with a buddy. 3. If you visit the ocean where large predators have been spotted, use a shark shield or other deterrent device. 4. Let your family or friends know your plans ahead of time. 5. When purchasing a wetsuit, look for options other than all black. Finally, be sure to let your friends and family know that you love them, as you never know what can happen. Please remember that Mr. Butterfield was well loved by his friends and family, and we send our condolences to them. Please keep all comments respectful. If you have questions or suggestions for future videos, please let us know in the comments below. To learn more about shark attack bites, visit trackingsharks.com. You can find us on social media at Tracking Sharks. We hope you enjoyed this video and be safe out there.